don't be shy to ask
Okay, I
questions. You know,
Thank you.
certainly welcome. I'd rather you be informed. Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Yeah.
I think everybody.
Well, thank you.
Look forward to working with you.
You too. Hello.
Yeah, oh yeah,
You know what I mean?
that's
Just,
correct. Yeah. Yeah, exactly, it's all you have to. There you go.
Hey, Marco, how are you?
How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
I look at you.
Okay, when did the Lucy
How have
auto
your
set?
meetings been going?
I know, we're talking about, I mean, today I go in, sold sign, and there's no cars out there. And I'm like,
I saw it yesterday. I think he's coming.
okay, well, like I said,
There you go.
I didn't go out there yesterday, but now I went out there on Friday or Saturday. Around, I was like,
impact type of things. It's nice.
so now we have room for
There you go.
yeah. What happened there? Luciano, sold, it's gone. I didn't see it. And no cars out front, nothing, and it's gone. Well, I figured, yeah, there's room for a roundabout there. I know. Okay, and you know the last time I was talking to you about that, you said, oh, doesn't matter. Or the points on the east side, right? Not in my research, it says no. It says stop light. Okay, well, Carol, on the agenda for other people, when the Center Street light was supposed to get a temporary stop traffic light. And that's, yeah.
No, she's talking through Third Street and.
Oh, 7th Street, yes, it's closed today, but that's all happening. Oh, something more than four-way stops, because I was in a line of, I was over the bridge, I was number 25, and 2 lanes of 25 people waiting to get through and stop and go, plus people turn, plus people who don't need to. So you go, we go. Well,
I would have to double check our files. I don't have that.
it's bad on it.
I've been at Spring
I know. Just a temporary one to try. We'll see how it works. Actually, I use it.
sitting there waiting for a light to turn on.
My jurisdiction is
You talk to Tom.
I'll double check with Tom.
Okay. Carol offered to give us all the information and he could bring it up.
Make his argument.
He could make his argument and at this point, rather, would you rather be put on? He could do it.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, it's kind of like.
As a discussion item,
Yeah,
because I know he doesn't work out.
yeah. I told him I would think about it. And just, yeah, I don't know. I guess I would kind of like to hear him more out. Because it's just like, I'm not sure if he's
We'll look into that.
And then he said, well, it should have been.
Yeah.
Because I think, because the problem is, he'll come to the building and say, they can't say what. Okay. Do you want, would you like me to, yeah, I'm kind of.
Yeah, I mean, even with discussion, we need like.
Well, if we got one discussion and somebody makes a
I mean, we could be too dirty as good. Like, I mean, getting that second stuff like that. Yeah, you shared like your thoughts on how you want for thinking that. Yeah, I'll have us check on those two. And it only and then I was also thinking but that's why yes.
I didn't want him to interrupt, but,
Thanks for bringing those to my attention. Hold on, everybody. Now, is this here for me?
Cahill.
Roll call, please.
here.
Fonseca. Here. Mitchell.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Schneider.
Here.
Thompson.
Here.
Yepes Gomez.
Here.
Okay, up for discussion is the potential annexation of 2346 Odessa Drive.
Good evening, Clayton Ender, Assistant Director, Housing Community Development. We have an annexation petition submitted by John and Annette. Is that a little better? There we go, thank you. We have an annexation petition submitted by John and Annette Lander for property located on the southwest side of town. The intended use of the property, as indicated by the applicant, is construction of one single-family detached dwelling for personal use, I believe, correct? Correct. And with a farm building. They are seeking to utilize Marshalltown Waterworks for water service. When approaching Waterworks, they were advised that they would have to either annex into the city or have the city otherwise refuse annexation prior to them supplying water for their project. That's kind of what transpired to them submitting the annexation application. Full transparency, they did advise me that their preference would be not to annex and still have waterworks, but here we are before you. Public Works, Fire, other departments have looked at this annexation, and it would certainly be an opportune time to annex this property into the city, if so desired by the city. While the existing homes on Odessa are currently unincorporated, it does appear that they are serviced by waterworks, or at least provided by fire protection from fire hydrants out there. Property out here would be serviced by the Marshalltown Fire Department and the need for fire service, but it would be on sanitary septic systems, since we do not have sanitary sewer service. If left unannexed, it would remain the responsibility of the Sheriff's Department for police protection rather than Marshalltown, and it is a private road, so we wouldn't acquire any lane miles for maintenance. So really what's before you tonight is an ask of whether or not we should proceed with annexation discussions on this, or if this would be an opportune time to advise staff that we're not interested in the annexation, refuse, and then we can release Waterworks to allow them to service it within unincorporated Marshall County. We do have the applicants here tonight. They can provide some additional context of their plans, or you can ask questions. But with that, happy to answer any questions of staff at this time.
Your Honor?
Yes.
So, point of clarification. So the other 7 properties along here are all outside of city limits?
Correct.
They're all in city water?
To the best of my knowledge.
Runs past that to get to this property already?
There's a line that runs along Odessa. There are several hydrants along Odessa Drive currently, so, and it dead ends kind of at this cul-de-sac bulb. So I know there's a line. I don't know if the individual homes are connected to it, but I do know that there's a water line with fire protection along Odessa.
Your Honor?
Yes.
Clean, do we know why it was that the other properties were able to connect to the waterworks, the city water, and not have to have gotten annexed?
I don't know the intricate details since that predated me, but from what I've surmised, previously the waterworks would provide service outside the city limits and didn't have a check in place to see on whether or not they were in city limits or not. They just blanket provided it essentially. Well, a few years back, they changed their practice and policy to require verification that it's within city limits, and if not, either the city has to annex or refuse. So they added that into their procedures a few years back. So the why they were not, I would be speculating.
Okay, yeah, sounds good. I mean, I think this is the first time we've seen this since I've been on council, so, I mean, I know there's the other homes, they were not connected, they are connected to the Marshtown Waterworks, but they're not in city limits. I think that since it's the first one, I would be in favor of the annexation, and so they could connect to the Marshtown Waterworks. That's what I think.
Anyone else have any questions?
So I'll just kind of clarify a few more things on that. First off, thank you for taking your time to hear this. And we really prefer not to be annexed. That was just part of the formal procedure that in order to apply to be hooked up, they said you got to fill out the annexation request form. I understand that there's been other people that have done that in the past, and the city council has not required them to hook up. And there is water, they said there was just water to the end of the old Odessa Drive, but it does go almost all the way out to where the pond is there. And we're planning to build out on the east side of the pond, so we would run water, so it's kind of out in the middle of the field there, and we would expect that we would pay for the cost of running the water line out to our house and everything. But that would really be the only, you say, well, why should we be annexed? The water would be really the only city service that we would be getting, and we'd be paying for that service through the water bills. We wouldn't have, there's no sewer lines out there for us to hook up to, so we'd have to put in our own sewer lines. The road's a private road, we own the road, so we're maintaining, both the snow removal as well as maintaining the road ourselves. So there's all those kinds of things, and to me, it doesn't make sense for one parcel in the middle of a farm field to be annexed especially when the other houses nearby are not, and they're much closer to town than what we would be. So, that's kind of, I guess that's all I had, unless you guys had more questions for me.
Does anyone have any questions?
Your Honor.
Yes.
And this is kind of a long-term question. I know in the information that we got, it talked about in long-term plans, we'd like to annex and expand city limits. Are there any in the 5 or 10-year plan to annex this land into the city, all of these? Or is it, where do we stand with that?
To date, there's been no other interest expressed for annexation in this area. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you own the properties to the south here too, the farm?
Correct. It's just the one parcel that you see there, but I own, it's a little over 100 acres there. So I also have access from Highland Acres Road and Iowa Avenue to my property.
So,
It just happens to be that we wanted to build closer to the pond, so that's how we chose that particular parcel out of the four that we own.
so with that, the majority of the land within this area is by this single landholder, and they would be the ones to express whether or not they're going to annex or not. And I'm not hearing an interest in annexing additional land. Now, there are a few other smaller landholders out here that could express interest, but they have not to date.
You're,
I was saying, I have no further plans. And I have no plans of selling further lots to develop this property. You know, I guess at some point, if it was gonna be a full-blown development, then maybe it would make sense to annex. But for one house in the middle of the farm field, I'm hoping that common sense will prevail and it won't get annexed, so that's where I'm at. But
Any other
Your Honor,
questions?
I am not a fan of de-annexing, but I don't see any reason to annex this right now until there's more development in this area. I mean, if you do decide to sell and redevelop, I would definitely maybe reconsider if there was more places out there, but I just don't think this one property makes sense.
Anyone else? Would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion
Okay, go ahead.
that we go ahead and just vote tonight and get it taken care of so he can get on with his work.
I believe it would have to come back as a resolution. So you make a motion to not annex it at this time?
No, I can't do that. It has to be in the positive. Motion has to be in the positive.
Your Honor, I make a motion that we annex this and this property.
Second.
Just to be clear, by virtue of voting this motion down, this covers his bases. We don't have to bring it back. It's a formal resolution. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Schneider,
No.
Thompson,
No.
Yepes Gomez,
No.
Cahill,
No.
Fonseca,
Yes.
Mitchell,
No.
Nichols,
No.
Okay. Motion was voted down.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you.
Budget discussion. Diana.
Good evening, Diana Steiner, Finance Director. So tonight, we're going to be going over the FY27 budget as our first agenda item. Just to kind of give you a 1,000-foot view of our budget. These are the revenues from all of our funds, not including Marshalltown Waterworks. So our revenues, 27% comes from taxes levied on property. Another 3% is from TIF, 11% from other city taxes, such as road use tax and local option sales tax, 4% from interest and rental properties, 33% from intergovernmental, which would be our grant funds, 19% for charges for service, and 2% for miscellaneous. So that's how our revenues are built. Our expenses for all funds, public safety is 17%, public works 15%, health and social services, which is the lead grant, 3%, culture and recreation, which includes the library, 5%, community and economic development, 5%, general government, 3%, debt service, 8%, capital projects, 20%, and business enterprise funds, 25%. If you just look at the general fund, almost $20 million, or 88%, is from taxes. 1% from licenses and permits, 0.64% from use of money, which is interest. Intergovernmental, 2.8. Charges for service, 6.3. And miscellaneous, 0.18. So when the legislature's down there chopping property taxes, we're in trouble. General fund expenses, I broke these out in where our money goes. So 81% is for personal services. That's our staff and benefits for the staff. Operating expenses, 19%. Equipment, 1%. So have any questions on any of these? If not, I will move on.
Your Honor, can I ask one question?
Yes.
Diane, I know this doesn't provide a comparative, but is this pretty similar to how it's been for quite a while?
Yes.
Nothing has changed dramatically in our distribution and intake and distribution of funds?
Right.
Thank you.
So to go over the FY27 budget, these are the forms that are required by the state to be filled out and submitted to the county by the end of April. So I'm bringing these forward because at the next meeting, bring a resolution to set the public hearing for April 27th. So in order to have this published, I wanted to go over it with you. This first sheet is a summary sheet. So it says what the budget for FY27 is proposed, and then FY26, we're re-estimating that. That's part of the budget amendment on the next discussion item. And then actual revenues and expenses that for the year that closed June 30th of 2025. So this is a summary. We'll go into detail here more on the second page. So I brought this sheet for the property tax many times. Again, we're looking at $16.25 per thousand for valuations. This next page is the fund balance report. Let's see. Rotate. Right there. Okay, here we go. So this is a summary sheet of the fund balance. I also provided you a spreadsheet that breaks these dollars out even more into the different categories. I'll get to that in a minute. So the first several sheets for expenditures are for FY26. So as we're doing the FY27 budget, we're also re-estimating FY26 to see if we need a budget amendment. And just to try and tie down what our better projected costs are for the year ending June 30th of 2026. So the departments went through their budgets at the same time we were putting together the FY27 budget. So you can see the different categories: general fund, special revenue funds, TIF, debt service, capital projects, and enterprise funds. So these different categories here, public safety, public works, health and social services, et cetera, are all built, have to be separated because when you do a budget amendment, you have to keep within these categories. So like, for example, the police and fire department all are within the same category. So if the fire department would go over, but the police department is under, you don't have to do a budget amendment. You only need to do a budget amendment if you're going to exceed your original adopted budget.
Your Honor, question? So for the budget, you're planning full staffing, so if there's any open positions, you've got that filled for the budget purposes?
For
Is that-
FY27, we did put a few vacancies in the police department, and then we figured some furloughs, and for people that are retiring, we said that we'd leave those positions open, the dollars amount for those positions to leave them open for 6 months.
You retire, we're leaving your position open for 6 months?
Well, I wasn't in the calculation.
No, it's up to my discretion, I believe is
Yeah.
how we phrased it, so
Yeah.
for that position will be filled.
And you said furloughs, you mean voluntary furloughs, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So is your position in here as the budget planning, or is that part of the, out of there for furlough, for waiting until January?
Well, I retire in July, so that'll be next fiscal year 27. So depending on who comes in as replacement, whether you'd have to add more to the FY27 budget.
How many retirements do we have coming up, Carol?
I could tell you I'd have to get a number. I know we've planned for some that we knew about, others we may not, so we'll evaluate them on a case-by-case basis when they come open.
So, so FY26 re-estimated, which is going to be our budget amendment. FY26 is revenues. You can see all the categories by that. I outlined these sheets in my memo, so I'm not going to spend much time on them unless you have questions. And then we go on to the FY27 budget. Same format, just different numbers. This is just a summary sheet of the adopted budget. So everything rolls forward. And then the long-term debt schedule, I brought this to you many meetings ago. So it breaks out between general obligation bonds and special revenue bonds, how much the principal and interest are, and the bond registration fees. And then over here, down at the bottom, we said we're going to use $3.2 million of local option sales tax because that's the percentage that we would get off of FY27's local option sales tax. That percentage is 75%. And then we said we were going to reduce the fund balance in our local option sales tax, so another 100,000. And then we were going to reduce the debt service fund by 200,000. So doing all of this keeps us within the $16.25 levy. $16.25 levy. And this is just another summary page between GO debt and special revenue debt. So when the budget's put together, it's important to look at the fund balances. So the general fund, you can see that it's remaining the same. So for our budget amendment, we're keeping revenues equaling expenses. And the FY27 budget, same thing. So we're going to keep the fund balance at $3.6 million. Cash flow reserve fund, you decided not to put any more in there. Using local option sales tax. So this amount is just interest earned. Let's see what others, large items. So when we updated our capital improvement plan, there was still some money for local option sales tax capital plans. So that has been updated. I need to tell you about Fund 363, which is our 2021 GO bonds. So we plan to have this spent because it'll hit 5 years in 2027. We need to have it basically money out the door. So in order to have the authority to spend, after discussing with Carol, we made an entry in our budget expenses for about $1.3 million for a reimbursement line. And some of that is more than likely going to go back to the IRS because of the arbitrage. If we don't need all the 1.3 to go back, then we can swap it with road use tax, some of those street projects, in order to get it spent. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, that we did do that as we were putting this
So
together.
this money has to be spent, or can it be encumbered?
Spent. We have
Project
to,
has
we
to be
have to
done.
do we have to do the arbitrage calculation within 5 years. So that is around November. So we got to get the information to the arbitrage professional to calculate it. So if you don't spend it, then you'll have to pay for another arbitrage calculation later.
So do you have any estimate of what that would be at this point in time?
When I calculated it through what the interest that we had earned through December, it was around $600,000. Because our rate was so low, is 0.98% is what we were paying for the bonds, and we were getting 3, 4, 5%.
$600,000 because we didn't have it spent on projects?
We were earning more interest than was allowed under the IRS rules.
Well, because we weren't using the money for the original bonding, or because of why?
Just delay in projects.
So, and for that, we have passed the threshold where we must pay it, or we must spend it, or we must pay it.
We will need to pay some back. Yes.
And for this time period, for the 2023, when other cities have borrowed, they're paying $1 million back. So it's not unusual for us. It's unusual for the city of Marshalltown, but it's not an unusual thing because of the low interest rates that people were borrowing at. Yeah, so just kind of got to back through here. So it's good when the general funds are positive, and then you have TIF. The special revenue funds, it's okay that they're negative as long as we know why. The Parks and Rec donation fund is negative because we have pledges still open for the Lynn Creek project. So in future years, more money will come in. So that's fine, that's explainable. Department of Justice grants, we spend it, then get reimbursed. So if the program ever ends, we'll be at zero after we get reimbursed. Same thing with this police undesignated grant. And then for the HUD-led grant, we pay out the money and then get reimbursed. So that's fine too.
I know one of the council's goals was to spend down the bond funds. So when you look at Fund 364 and 365, you can see for at end of fiscal year 2025, we had $10.5 million in Fund 365, and we're projecting that to be 1.6 million at the end of fiscal year 27. So we are making efforts to spend down those funds.
And road use tax is very similar. At June 30th of 25, we had 12 million. We're spending down to 7 by the end of 2027. Then you have your enterprise funds. And all these numbers in the state system on these worksheets have Marshalltown Water Works included. We are required to report their information on our forms. And then the next form I have is transfers between funds for fiscal year 27. So transfers are needed statutorily when you are having the employee benefit fund levy or the municipal fire and police retirement system. They have to go into a special revenue account. Those costs are paid out of the general fund, so then we're transferring money. Same thing for transit. Transit, the money comes into the general fund, and then we transfer it to transit. 330 030 is the same thing. It's a capital account. Money from the property tax levies comes into Fund 300 and then gets transferred to Fund 030. Of course, road use tax, we've talked about that before. That reimburses the general fund for gross wages for the employees for the Public Works Department. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. That way, sure why this flipped. Other ones are, for example, you might have a project in the 2023 GO bond fund, so you're starting that project and you want to keep it in that project, so then you're transferring other funds such as road use tax or a different bond to help pay for those. So if you think of transfers as just, you're just moving it from checking to savings and back and forth, you're not spending extra, so that's why they keep it separate as a transfer in and out, because it's not considered an expense. Here's your local option sales tax. So we updated this for the capital projects that matches our 5-year capital plan. So you can see those, all the adjustments we talked about during the budget season have been accounted for now. So your budget comparison reports, there's one for the revenues that are broken out by the categories. So going back to this sheet up here, they're broken out by these different categories, and then the expenses are as well. So do you have any questions or feel like there need to be any changes before we bring it back next week to set the public hearing?
Anyone have anything?
Sorry, I didn't mean to ignore you. Talking this way.
Go ahead.
Okay. Next topic.
We have any public comment? Okay.
I did also provide Marshalltown Waterworks budget. Their board approved theirs budgets, which I then incorporate into our budget. Okay, now we're going to discuss the FY26 budget amendment, which is this current year. It's going to end June 30th. If you're going to do a budget amendment, you have to have it to the county by May 31st. We just find it easier that while we're doing the new year budget for FY27, it's just as easy to update FY26's budget. A budget amendment is required if your expected expenses are going to exceed your adopted budget for these items. Revenues, it doesn't matter. You can exceed or come in under, and on revenues, that doesn't matter. But for the expenditure side in these categories, you're supposed to do a budget amendment whenever you're going to exceed it. So you can see some of these items we are going to exceed, and you should have in front of you a handout that I put together that explains the different changes in the line items. So I'm just going to hit the bigger ones when we're increasing. So use of money and property, that's the interest primarily. Again, we delayed doing projects for bonds and road use tax, so then that pushed the money, the interest money up. Miscellaneous, We did set up a new fund, 139, for Pleasant Hill Pool Foundation. So they reimburse the city for expenses to operate the pool. So we wanted to get that amount in there. That was about $40,000 of this $800,000 number. We also increased reimbursements from property insurance. So when we have a claim in insurance, ICAP, who we use for insurance, they reimburse us or, take their, or make the payment less the deductible amount. So we put a minimum amount in there, a guesstimate, but it's going to come in higher than we thought. So we've adjusted for that. The biggest increase is about $546,000 for library donations to pay for the interior remodel of the library. An increase of $55,000 for a 10% homeowner contribution through the lead grant. And then, let's see, transfers in and out. We do have a separate worksheet for that. So we'll skip down here to public safety since it's increasing. So the council approved an additional $90,000 for flock cameras. You approved the EMS study for about $30,000. Our building inspection contractor, we're increasing that by about $102,000. So that is offset with additional revenue. So we pay the contractor, we bill it out. Rental inspections increasing by about $10,000 and nuisance expenses by about $143,000. We have new SmartGov software this year and more legal and cleanup expenses related to nuisance. And then the police officer vacancies for military leave and their benefits. Going down to culture and recreation, since that's an increase. Again, this is library, parks, and rec. So we're increasing the Coliseum for electricity by about $18,000. Years ago, council approved some cabinets being built in the Coliseum, and we still owe that about $19,000 on that. Hopefully, they'll be done by the end of June, and we'll make the payment. If not, it'll roll into FY27. The master plan for recreation, $60,000. Pleasant Hill pool expenses, again, that foundation is reimbursing us, but we needed to put $40,000 in for expenses. Marshalltown softball, $17,000. Expenses paid with donated funds, $204,000. And then we adjusted all the equipment and big park projects under the 5-year capital plan that you have seen before. Okay, the rest are being lowered. So the capital projects and the enterprise funds, we're delaying those projects, so that's why they're being decreased. They'll come in future years, FY27 and on forward. So at the bottom here, our fund balance. The adopted budget showed expenditures exceeding revenues by $23.8 million. And the budget amendment shows $14.3 million. Right there. So the ending funding balance is projected to be $80 million at the end of June of this year. But again, under the 5-year capital plan, that money is going to be spent. It's already programmed to be spent. So at the end of June, we project it to be $63 million. So any questions on any of the budget amendment?
Anyone have any questions? Anything from the public?
Nope, we'll bring it back to set the public hearing at the next meeting.
Thank you. And with that, our regular meeting is over at 6:08 PM. Do I hear a motion to go into
I
closed
so
session?
move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Thompson,
Yes.
Yepes Gomez,
Yes.
Cahill,
Yes.
Fonseca,
Yes.
Mitchell,
Yes.
Nichols,
Yes.
Schneider.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.